Hello lovelies, welcome to my channel and welcome to today's tutorial. If this is your first time of coming across my channel, please do well to subscribe, like, share and also drop a comment in the comment section. So on today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to make this beautiful button down flare dress with a V neckline. So if this is something you'd like to learn, please do well to watch this video to the end. Thank you. So I've gone ahead to mark out our starting line, which will also serve as the shoulder line, and I've also marked out 1.5 inches on the center of the paper to serve as our button allowance for the front. So the next thing to do, I'm going to fold in this 1.5 inches so we can start drafting our pattern, because this paper will be serving for both the front and the back pattern. So after folding in the 1.5 inches, the next thing to do is to mark out our vertical measurement. So I'm going to be marking our bust point, which is 11.5 inches, and also our waistline, which is 18 inches, and I will mark same points at the other side so that we can have a straight line. So after doing that, I'll just go ahead to connect these lines together. So after connecting the lines together, I'll go ahead to mark out my shoulder measurement divided by 2 on our shoulder line, which mine is 7.5 inches, and I'll also mark out our neck width of 3 inches and a neck depth of 1 inch for the back. So I'll just go ahead now to connect these lines together to give us our back neckline. So after connecting our back neckline, the next thing to do is to go down by 1 inch for our shoulder slope. So I'll just connect these lines together. After connecting the lines together, on that point, I'm going to be marking our chest line. To get your chest line, you divide your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Mine is 8.3 inches. So I'm just going to mark a straight line across. So on the chest line, I'm going to mark out my shoulder measurement divided by 2 so I can also get a straight line. So after connecting the lines together, I'm going to be imputing my bust circumference divided by 4 on our chest line, just like this. And also I'll be adding 1 inch for joining allowance. And also on our waistline, I'm going to be imputing my waist circumference divided by 4, which is 8.75, and I will be adding 1 inch for sewing allowance also. So now we are going to be drawing out our armhole curve. So we are going to be dividing whatever we have on the armhole line into 2, just like this, so we can get the midpoint. Then we are just going to use our curve rule to connect the armhole for the back. So to get the armhole for the front, on that same midpoint, we'll go in by half an inch. Then use our curve rule to connect the lines together, just like you see me do, to get our front armhole curve. So after getting our front armhole curve, we're just going to connect our bust measurements to our waist measurement, just like this. So the next thing is to get the full length of our dress. So we're going to place our tape measure at the starting line and mark out our full length measurement in a circular manner. So the full length of my dress is 35 inches. So I'm just going to mark out the 35 inches in a circular manner, just as you see me do. So after marking out our full length of our dress in a circular manner, we are going to connect the lines together. So we're also going to determine how wide we want our full length, our hemline to be. So mine, I want it to be 25 inches. So I'm just going to mark 25 inches on the hemline, just like this. So after marking the 25 inches on the hemline, the next thing to do is to connect that point to the waistline, just as you see me do. So the next thing to do now is to curve out our waistline, just like this, so we can avoid any sharp edges. So this will be all for the drafting of our pattern. So let's go ahead to cut out on our fabric. This is the fabric I'm going to be using. It's a thick crepe fabric and it's 3 yards. So we are going to place our back pattern on the folded edge of our fabric just like this. I've also gone ahead to fold our fabric into two. So I'll just go ahead now to add half an inch allowance at the neckline of our dress, the shoulder slope, and also the armhole. So let's go ahead to cut out. So after cutting out our back pattern, this is what we have. So let's go ahead to cut out our front pattern. So for the front pattern, we are going to bring out that 1.5 inches we folded in earlier, and we are also going to cut out the front armhole. So for the front neckline, I went ahead to place my tape in the shape of a V and mark out 10 inches for our front neckline. So I'll just go ahead to cut this out. So for our front pattern, I've gone ahead to place it on the folded edge of our fabric just like this. But this is not actually necessary because we are still going to cut our center front into two to give us two pieces for the front. So I'll just go ahead to cut this out. So after cutting out our front pattern, this is what we have. So I'll just go ahead to divide our center front into two to give us two pieces for the front. So now we are going to be cutting out facing for our front neckline. So on the shoulder line just like this, I'm going to be marking out 2.5 inches, and I'll mark that 2.5 inches all the way down just as you see me do. So after marking the 2.5 inches, I'm just going to connect the lines together. So after connecting the lines together, I'll go ahead to cut this out. So after cutting out, this is what we have. So I'll go ahead to cut this out on our fabric. So after cutting out on our fabric, this is what we have. I've also gone ahead to cut out facing for the back pattern. I'm not going to be adding any estate to this facing because the fabric is already thick. So let's go ahead now to start joining our pieces together. So for our front piece, I'll just go ahead to align the facing and the main fabric together just as you see me do, right sides facing each other. And I'll go over to my sewing machine and run a stitch from the shoulder line all the way down to the hem line, and I'll do the same for the other side of the front piece also. And for the back piece, I'm just going to align the facing and the main fabric together and also run a stitch around the neckline. This is what we have after joining the facing and the main fabric together. I've also done the same thing for the other side of the front piece and also for the back piece. So for the back piece, I've also made notches around the neckline. So the next thing to do now is to make a top stitch around the neckline. So I went ahead to push the sewing allowance to the side of the facing, and I'll make a top stitch on it. And also for the front piece, I've gone ahead to push the allowance to the side of the facing, and I'll also make a top stitch on it. So after making a top stitch on it, this is what we have for the back piece. And also for the front piece, I've gone ahead to make top stitch on the sewing allowance, and this is what we have. So at this point, if you have a weaving machine, you can go ahead to weave around the edges of the facing, but I'll do mine later on. So I went ahead to use my hemming gum to hold down the main fabric and the facing together, just as you see me do. So, and also for the back piece, I've gone ahead to use my hemming gum also to hold down the facing and the main fabric together. And I've also went ahead to use my pins to hold down the two front piece together, just as you see me do. So the next thing to do now is to join the shoulder of our dress. So I'm just going to place the back piece on the front piece just like this, right sides facing each other, and I'll go over to my sewing machine and join the shoulders together just like this. And I'll also do the same for the other side of the shoulder. So after joining the shoulders together, this is what we have. So I'll go ahead now to cut out the sleeve for our dress. So I've gone ahead to mark out our starting line for the sleeve, and the next thing to do is to mark out 4.5 inches for our cap height, and I'll just rule a straight line across. So the next thing to do is to mark out the length of our sleeve. I'll be using 18 inches for the length of this sleeve, and I'll add 1 inch for joining allowance. So on our cap height line, I'll go ahead to mark out my bicep measurement divided by 2. My bicep is 15 inches divided by 2 will give us 7.5, and I went ahead to add 1 inch for sewing allowance. So on the starting line, I'll mark out 4 inches, and on that point I will divide it by 2. So I'll go ahead now to use my curve rule to curve out our armhole just as you see me do. So after curving out our armhole, I'll go ahead to confirm if I have my round armhole measurement divided by 2 on that armhole curve. So that's correct. I have my round armhole divided by 2. So I'll go ahead now to mark out whatever I have on that point and replace it on the hem of our sleeve just like this. And I'll go ahead to connect the lines together. I will also add 1 inch allowance for ease, and I'll go ahead to cut this out. So after cutting out, I'll just go ahead to cut out another piece for the second sleeve. So I'll go ahead to make a notch at the tip of this 2 sleeve, and the next thing to do now is to fold the hem of the sleeve, and I'll go ahead to add my elastic on the hem of the sleeve. So after adding my elastic on the hem of the sleeve, I'll just go ahead to attach the sleeve to the main dress. So I'll align the sleeve and the center of the shoulder just like this, right sides facing each other, and I'll go over to my sewing machine and run a stitch on it. I'll also do the same for the other side of the sleeve. So after joining our sleeve to our dress, this is what we have, and I also went ahead to iron it out. So the next thing to do now is to finish the hem of our dress. So I'll go over to my sewing machine and fold in the hem just like this, and I'll run a stitch around it all through. So at this point, we can go ahead to fix in our buttons and make our buttonholes. Thank you.